Wonderful. So our panel today, we're talking about effectively measuring marketing post-cookies. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Radia, and I'm head of individual supporters, which is basically individual giving at Crisis, and I have been so for the last 2.5 years. And before that, I was at WaterAid for 9 years, heading up their acquisition team. So it's nice to see a lot of WaterAid faces in the crowd as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Simi. I'm a digital account director at the Kite Factory. Been here for about 3 years now and in media for about 7 years in total. And yeah, lovely to see some of my clients in the audience today. So hi everyone.
My name's Allan. I'm from Quantcast. I'm not sure if everybody knows Quantcast, but we're a technology platform using a lot of things you'll hear, buzzwords, AI, machine learning, and big data, to help publishers. So that's one side of my business. I look after the publisher relationships, help us understand their audiences. And the other side, which is where the work we do with the Kite Factory, is helping marketers reach their audiences using our platform.
Cool, wonderful. So we've tried to get all the perspectives from like all the different angles of the story here today to talk about what measurement looks like post-cookies to everyone here. So the first question for everyone that we've got is, with the retirement of cookies, what impact concerns you individually the most?
So I start, and first thing I'd like to kind of say well done to the Kite Factory, because I've been to a lot of these sessions, both in the crowd and on panels, and hardly anybody talks about measurement. Everybody's talking about how do we do to cookie, how do we target, so well done. This is very refreshing, because that is the biggest problem, is measurement. If you can't measure, you can't optimize. If you can't measure, you can't frequency cap. If you can't measure, you don't know you got the order. It's measurement is key.
Yeah, I think kind of building on what Allan said is optimization. As a digital marketer, the first thing that I know is going to be affected is the ability to optimize. That is what makes digital what it is. It what makes digital the most fastest moving kind of reactive channel. It's why digital always has such a staple place on any media plan, because we can react so quickly to real-time data we're getting on a daily basis. We can make informed decisions. And when that actual data is minimized, that's therefore going to affect how much we can optimize in real time. And that's such a key part of how digital marketing works. And then obviously, as Allan said, measurement, that's the key thing. So for me, it's the issue of attribution. So as a digital marketer, actually proving what I'm doing is driving what you want for your money. We're always going to be asked, by our clients, what has that driven on a DR, on a bottom line basis? And when you're getting a minimized view of what you're actually seeing your activity has driven, that's going to be kind of one of the biggest issues as well.
And for me, this is probably a classic charity response, but it's the disparity. So the larger players with the bigger walled gardens and the breadth of content will fare a lot better than smaller niche players. And I think that's something, probably always the way, but something to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. So then for you, Allan and Simi, speaking from sort of like the tech side of things, the solutions out there, we've been testing a few things in the agency. What is showing promise at the moment?
Sure, I'll go. We've definitely kind of noticed that this year is the year to be doing as much testing as possible, and we are starting to see things become available to actually try. Obviously, the full retirement is expected next year, so this is really our year to just get learning. Firstly, looking at social, for example, everyone knows Meta is the biggest platform that clients tend to spend their money. Already, we're trying wider attribution windows that are available on the platform, and CAPI, as I'm sure some of you have heard of. So that's kind of Facebook, or Meta, should I say, that's their kind of solution now to post iOS 14 when users are opting out of in-app and in-web tracking. CAPI is really the solution, which is server to server. We've definitely seen some struggles with it in terms of the actual level of data it can bring back, and it's not as kind of custom as perhaps the usual way that we do through pixels. But we have found with clients who are setting it up and running it alongside their pixel that we are actually seeing wider results. We're seeing them a bit more in line with their internal CRM or their GA, for example, so it is showing fairly promising results. Looking at Google and search, they also have a server-to-server integration via GTM as well, so that's one option which we can be exploring. There's a new attribution model from Google, which is DDA, so that's data-driven attribution, and that actually looks at the contribution of every touch point throughout the conversion journey to make more informed decisions on which should get that actual conversion attributed to them, rather than just a purely last-click basis. So that's also kind of showing a bit of promise when it comes to search, as obviously that's a huge channel for a lot of clients. And then lastly, from Kite Factory, I guess to blow our own trumpet a little bit, we've developed a really, really robust reporting platform called Flight Deck. I'm sure if you're a client, you know of this very well. Everybody's set up with it. And what it does is it is a real opportunity to bring in multiple conversion points from loads of different APIs. So that can be lots of different platforms. It can be brand health tools, internal GAs, client internal CRM. So whatever works for you in your business, we can pull in that data and we can really present data at a bit more of a robust kind of holistic point of view. And the key point of that is it allows for blended reporting. And I think that blended reporting is going to be key for everybody to just embrace as we do move forward. There isn't a one single source of truth anymore like there used to be via Google Campaign Manager or Flash Talking, for example. We do kind of have to move away from that as it's just not working anymore. So we have to allow for blended touch points of actual conversion data. Yeah,
and from Quantcast point of view, again, blowing our own trumpet, I'll start with that, is we've had a lot of success. We launched our solution back in September, a cookieless solution, and we've had hundreds of campaigns running through it already, seeing great results. Measurement, of course, independent measurement is the thing that's the challenge. But when it comes to where we've seen success, it's around the probabilistic space, modeling, using AI, machine learning, and huge data sets to make. I think we've got to be really open about this, and it's going to be hopefully a topic that kind of gets more grounded. Is you have to have guesswork. You have to start thinking about using very smart technology to make very accurate guesses about is this your audience, is this your converter, is this the person who's attributed. If you want to go down the deterministic point, which is very effective, if you know it's your customer, that's the best thing in the world. But to get deterministic IDs across the whole ecosystem, you are going to need the entire internet logged in. The entire, not just your customers, but everywhere. And at best, my publisher relationships, we're seeing single-digit logged-in users. So that's a real challenge. And the other side of it, where we're getting success, is contextual. Contextual's got huge scale. We can get a contextual signal from pretty much every impression we see, be it context of the page, the weather, location. We can get scale around that. But as you all know, and you've heard long time about, contextual being around a long time, it's quite hard to get the effectiveness. Is it the right audience? Are they, the right ones? And there's a place for that. So the question, where we've seen success, we're seeing success across, all of those solutions. Our innovation comes in the modeling piece, but we also have contextual, and we also are working with the deterministic. So if it was one thing I'd ask you all to kind of take from this today is, yes, measurement's important, but testing. Yeah, I'd love to say that we've got it solved, but we have one way of solving it. You should be trying lots of different solutions right now.
And your point about that balance between deterministic and probabilistic links back to what Ben said earlier about like the mindset of how we approach measuring digital going forward is so important. Mm-hmm. Just picking up on your point about server-to-server, Simi, I know we as an agency for a couple of years have been trying to push server-to-server integrations, but a lot of people are quite nervous about it. It feels like a really scary thing. Like when you look at the data agreement, you're like, oh no, what is this? So from the client perspective, like, as Krite has already been through this, like, how did that process go for you? And what did it look like?
It was really interesting. I think we were saying before, I think it's a lot about trust. And I think where we went wrong initially was maybe trying to explain the ins and outs of it to people who weren't necessarily digital experts. And that didn't go so well. But actually where we had success was just to really step back and explain it really simply. And then to have that trust and, like you say, look at things holistically, look at the longer term value, and then move forward that way.
Brilliant. So if there are any clients in this room who are having trouble getting CAPI through your legal teams, Helen has the advice for you.
Yeah, we started off with a paper on CAPI, and we ended up with a paper on what is the internet, basically, going to the trustees.
And just quickly on the programmatic side of things, are there any server-to-server solutions like in development at all? Or is that something not really coming into the programmatic space?
Yeah, so we're looking at it for two reasons. One is the reason why there's so many tags on people's pages is because of third-party cookies. If we think about third-party cookies aren't needed anymore, do you need as many tags on page? If you don't want as many tags on page, one way of doing this is through the server. And of course, that helps with page speed, page load. There's all positives of taking tags off site. So we think about it from a server to server, from a, removing the requirement of tagging page. And we're also looking at it in the other way is we need an identifier to replace that. And one way that you can get that identifier, be an email, be some kind of deterministic identifier, is via server to server. We don't need something on the page necessarily to do that. So yes, Quantcast is looking at both those things. We should be launching things very soon.
Cool, wonderful. Probably worth saying that sounds wonderful server to server, but it's not the solution. It's not the replacement to cookies. It's one within a toolkit of what we can use going forward. So in terms of from the brand perspective, Helen, what impact do you see beyond digital, and how can you as a brand turn this into an opportunity going forward?
Well, ever the optimist, I think there's a lot of optimism here, and it sort of echoes a lot of what Ben was saying this morning. But I think in recent years, what we've maybe gained in measurement, we possibly have lost in creative and customer experience. And I think there's a lot to be said for going back to sort of core marketing, strong and solid principles to try and deepen the customer relationship there. So, for example, really understanding our audiences, their motivations, their drivers, their values. What is it that they want and need? And then creating creative, as Ben was saying, that really, really speaks to that. So, there's a lot of ways, for example, if relevancy is important, to create relevancy other than retargeting. And actually, digital is a fantastic place to make that come to life. There's so many innovative and amazing things you can do with creative digitally as well. But obviously, for that, you do need to be really audience and insight driven. That needs to be at the forefront of everything you're doing. So that's what, to Ben's point, strategy and planning, which often gets skipped over, and especially probably with all the measurement we've had recently. Just get retargeting live. It's a quick thing, but actually we may be missing the front end. And as well as that, that sort of speed to market and innovation and testing as well as understanding, and Simi will probably cover this as well, your database and the first party data that you do have. And I think as well as that, it's about looking at the levers that we do have in our control, and Ben touched on it as well. There's amazing partners out there that can't give us proxy measures or quick measures, but they can really look holistically. So, whether it's using your agency to develop an amazing engagement framework, like Kite Factory did for both WaterAid and are now doing so for Crisis, and really looking holistically at driving people down that framework on a macro scale. Or, there's agencies like Consumer Insight that can really track what you're doing and track it down the funnel, and lots of different ways to look at it from that perspective. And then I think the third thing is, the linear attribution has been weakening for a very long time. So we should, as marketeers, be looking at that bigger picture, that holistic picture anyway. We should be looking at the bottom line CPA of everything we're doing, whether it's offline, online, just across the piece, and looking at the lifetime value of that rather than looking at channels separately. And we should be looking at longer term metrics as well. Which obviously, to move someone down a funnel, to move someone across an engagement framework, it's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of long lead conversion going on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think just to touch on your point about first-party data and individual databases, that is definitely something that I would say is a really strong opportunity moving forward. First-party data is going to be crucial. Most people do it anyway, but just looking at how we can segment it a bit more to learn a bit more about our audience and the differences in the audiences that we already know and how we can keep them engaged. There's no point, keep talking to people who are warm to your brand in the same way every time and saying hello for the first time every time you interact with them, because they already know you. And people are increasingly showing that they want personalization from the brands that they know and who they interact with. So really building that first-party data, that will obviously help with things like retargeting, because naturally retargeting pools will diminish when it comes to cookies kind of going. We're going to get smaller opt-ins, and therefore pixels are going to build less people. So really using CRM to actually retarget will be key. And then lookalikes. If you work with digital marketers, you'll hear us talking about this all the time, but the power of lookalikes. So just using those warm sources to find audiences of people who look like people who actually convert with us and engage with us and share similar attributes. That will unlock people that we wouldn't even think to target in the first place. They would fall into interest categories that we wouldn't necessarily create ourselves. And that will really give the opportunity to build more kind of sophisticated persona models and just more sophisticated audiences that we can apply across our campaigns.
Yeah, and from a pure technology point of view, first thing I think about is those KPIs. We talk about changing KPIs. Right now, do we have the right metrics? Have we got the right, are they proxy metrics? We know that clickers aren't always converters. We know that bots don't give donations, they don't book flights, but they click. So first of all, you have to think about those KPIs. Then a technology you want to work with is ones that can automate that goal. So if you set the right goals, let the technology do it. Because if you can find the right technology, you don't need to pull levers. It'll find those goals for you. And it'll give you much more time to do the things that Helen's talking about, which is time consuming, but it's the stuff you want to do, which is planning, looking at audiences, looking at your first party data, coming up with great creatives. So really it's about right goals, technology that can do it for you, and then free you up to do the fun stuff.
I love the positivity you've all brought to this. Like, it feels like, I think when we all heard about cookies appreciating, it felt like a really scary moment as digital marketers. But I think, with time, we've come to realize actually it's a huge opportunity for us. How feasible, this is a real opportunity for us to grow up as a channel, for digital to be viewed in a really different perspective. But how feasible is that? Can advertisers, can suppliers actually let that happen? What does that look like to all of you?
Yeah, I think it is a question of whether it will be allowed to grow up, and not just advertisers and suppliers. As Rick was saying this morning, individual finance teams. Is the trust and the mindset and the culture there to sort of take that punt on longer term conversion? And I think that's really big as a client.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I think it is a mindset shift rather than if it's possible or not. And I think that's what it's kind of taking some getting used to. So kind of what Ben was touching on earlier in terms of that longer term planning is what's going to be vital. I'm sure a lot of you have read The Future of Digital Planning, which is a paper that Ben wrote recently, which talked all about this. And the real key takeouts from that paper was that we have to move away from that short-termist, kind of siloed individual campaign planning and really look at everything on a broader scale. And even if your campaigns sit at different ends of the funnel, they should all overall be working together for that longer-term kind of shared goal for your business. So not looking at it on such a siloed short-term, just as Ben said, jumping from one campaign to the other. I think there'll be a bit of an importance, more of an importance in media mix modelling. I won't go into too much, I'm sure Sarah will talk about this later, but obviously looking at the statistical relevance of every organic and paid media touch point throughout the whole journey to become more informed decisions and more informed insights on what actually drove and what role your media played in that. And then lastly, I would say it will just be a case of just still applying some kind of rationale and logic to it as well. We know digital works and we've got years worth of data of how digital has worked for our businesses before. Just because we're seeing less, it doesn't mean it's just suddenly not happening. It just means that we have to change our mindset to understand that there may just be a sort of smaller view on it now, but it doesn't mean it's just not there. So I think just still applying that same logic that we have to still justify, having digital on the plan and knowing what role it plays in your overall journey.
For me, it has to grow up. Because if it doesn't, as a user of the internet, I'm concerned. Because for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, the open web and digital is being used as a way to do direct response. It's to do those KPIs that is all about driving sales, which is great. But with demise of third-party cookies, everything we're talking about, that's going to get harder. So for me, growing up is, can we move further up the funnel? Can digital be used as a more of a brand building tool? Because if it can't, then the only places where you're going to be able to use digital for what's the alternative, which is the KPIs that you used to today, is the walled gardens. And there goes the open web. Yeah, I go to the web for many things. I don't necessarily go to the walled gardens, but there's so much content. That's funded by advertising. If that goes, then it's going to be a very different web. So I think it has to grow up. That's down to you guys as marketers. That's down to us as technology to make it easier to do that. But no, if it doesn't as well, then the money's going to flow to where, if brand money's going to flow to TV, radio, outdoors. That's where everyone's used to doing brand at the moment. So yeah, has to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's the responsibility of all of us here in this room to facilitate that and have those difficult conversations with the people holding the money. So then the last one, hopefully you're all going to give me nice silver bullet answers here. What does effectiveness in digital mean to you post-cookies?
You want me to go first? Okay, I'll try and be snappy. I think using the levers that we do have in our control, really focusing in on that strong and solid marketing principles, but especially the front end stuff, so the strategy and the planning and the audience insight. Yeah, I think they're the key ones.
Use automated technology to deliver the right KPIs and move away from the wrong ones to free you up to do the planning and being able to measure it in a more effective way.
Yeah, and for me, looking at it from a metric point of view, it will be engagement, but that will have to be secondary because, there is a theory called Goodhart's law, and it basically says that the moment you make a certain metric your key measurement, it actually loses its value. So if we just start optimizing towards engagement, then all we're going to do is set the algorithms to seek out people and bots that give you engagement. So really, for me, the metric will be reaching your key audience, and then the secondary measures will be those how they're engaging with your brand and the value of the engagements they're giving you.
And I think that's really important about these new metrics coming in engagement. We saw reviewability. We thought that was a great one. All it did is it just everyone just played the system. More ads, top of the page. Now if it's attention, or we've got to be careful that doesn't just become overlays on page. So they're important, but they can't be everything because the system will be played.
They have to be measures of success against the right strategy.
They should be, just table stakes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that is us. Thank you very much, all of you. And hopefully that was insightful to everyone. And then I think we have another... Oh, I'll leave that to Rick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.